Let's start with a strand of DNA. Now in our experiment, we're going to call this heavy DNA. What happens with the conservative model? In the conservative model, that DNA strand makes a second copy of DNA that looks like this. If that's the result, then in the test tube, half of our DNA will be heavy and half our DNA will be light. Now let's look at the dispersive model of DNA. In the dispersive model of DNA, some DNA is going to stay the same and some will be copied. So now we're going to get some new DNA copied in with our old DNA. If this is the case, half the DNA will be new DNA, light, and the other half of the DNA will be old DNA, heavy. As a result, in our test tube, we would expect to have a band of DNA right in the middle. Half is heavy, half is light. They're joined together. Now let's look at the semi-conservative model of DNA. In this case, the DNA splits and each side makes a complementary half. If this is the case, again, we would expect the DNA in our test tube to make a band right in the middle. It's not too heavy, not too light. So in our test tube, we would have a band right in the middle. Now this is consistent with the data that we collected. But what happens in the dispersive model after the second division? In the second division, again, we're going to have some segments that disperse and others that are going to remain the same and copied. This is what happens after the second replication in the dispersive model. In this case, you'll notice we still have some heavy DNA mixed with light DNA. As a result, we would have all of our DNA, some heavy and some light because it's connected, right in the center of our test tube. This is what happens after the second round of DNA replication in the semi-conservative model. In this case, we have some strands that are light DNA and some strands that are split between the heavy DNA and the light. What would that look like in our test tube? In this case, we have some of the DNA that is both heavy and light. It makes a band. We have another band of DNA that is completely light. Now, which model best fits the data that we see?